Recently, I heard PatricianTV talking about me in a stream, so I decided to look through some transcripts and see if this is a regular thing. It isn't, which is nice, but the few times he mentions me, he has said some pretty strange, out-of-pocket things. Even though I don't like PatricianTV, there is definitely some overlap in our viewers. Because of this, and the fact that his streams have tens of thousands of views, people who have watched my content have heard him talk about me. So before you judge me for making this video, I want you to think about someone giving a speech to a room full of 1,000 people, and some of them even know you, and during that speech they say this.
Old Knight, he has a history of like taking stances that are anti what I've said. So I'll just say on the record, this is an addressal to the Old Knight, okay? In my opinion, actually not even in my opinion, I think this is objectively true, but in my opinion, Mr. Old Knight, pedophilia is evil. You must now take the counter position of that. Do with that what you will.
This made me chuckle at first, but the problem is there are viewers of mine who will believe this, that my opinions are simply the opposite of PatricianTV. Just to get this out of the way, I agree with him that pedophilia is evil, and I'm actually surprised that we agree there is an objective morality. I didn't think him the type to believe in that. Alright, now that that's out of the way, let's dive into the purpose of the video. PatricianTV twists the truth in order to spin a web of lies for his viewers. He has charisma and he is very slick. The best way of dealing with someone like this is to slow down and break down all the details. This will be in two parts. First, I'll talk about how he lied about Emil Pagliarulo and never knows best. The second part will be all about the Old Knight. For context, a few years ago, PatricianTV put out an 8-hour video on Starfield. In this video, he claimed that Starfield was made with no design document, which explains everything wrong with it. In fact, he said that developers were unable to find any information about the game by looking it up, that they were instead forced to boot up the game.
Diving into Starfield as a game requires 3 key words that are going to tie this entire analysis together. It's like a magic phrase that really explains everything wrong with this game. No design document.
The reason this is worse than just making a mistake or even lying is because he lays the blame for the lack of a design document largely at the feet of Emil Pagliarulo.
By account, Pagliarulo learned to hate design documents with Fallout 3, and so his next lead project of Fallout 4 went without one. This is not the first time Pagliarulo has discussed his aversion to design documents.
Well, there you have it. Emil claims that he hates design documents. He also has an aversion to them, and that is why Fallout 4 and Starfield went without them. During this same video, Pat made some weak, mealy-mouthed clarifications that absolutely do not clarify anything.
To be fair, design and writing director Emil Pagliarulo stated that there is a design document, but that it is very short, and he believes the game itself is the real design document. Imagine being a designer and being told to go play the game instead of reading a few pages to answer your questions. This is woefully ineffective and can be chaotic on a development process.
Design documents are only as good as, you know, your follow through when you actually start putting stuff in game, like 100%.
Never Knows Best then released a video, Lies, Hate, and the Story of Emil Pagliarulo. This video is over 2 hours long and goes into quite a bit of detail. He demonstrates why PatricianTV is wrong and explains that no, Emil was just saying that Bethesda transitioned from using one GDD like a design Bible and transitioned into a wiki system, like most other AAA developers.
He does say that Bethesda moved away from using lots of extensive design documents after Fallout 3 in favor of a more iterative focused process, but this sounds more like an adherence to industry standards than a rejection of them. The era of one big central design document containing everything written before production starts ended long ago. In modern times, most large studios use a living document approach centered around some sort of wiki where various parts of game development can be documented in different ways according to different developers' needs and desires. And we have no reason to believe that Bethesda is any different.
I want you to take a moment and read the words on screen. Imagine being a designer and being told to go play the game instead of reading a few pages to answer your questions. There isn't any way to really interpret this, other than clearly PatricianTV is claiming that documentation at Bethesda was so poor that designers had no way of looking up information about Starfield as they were developing the game. This is the thesis of his entire video. He reiterates this again and again and again. And in case you think I'm taking him out of context, you can go watch the 15-minute section in his Starfield video titled On Design Documents. Seriously, listen to this.
And yet, I find it prudent to have a design document. I don't just mean the script, I often have an additional document cataloging sources and keeping track of ideas. The longer I expect a project to take, the more robust that document becomes, because fundamentally, I am forgetful and it's handy to have that kind of stuff on paper, so editor me doesn't have to ask writer me what his source was. Immel says the reason he dislikes design documents is because updating documentation is a time-consuming task.
Two things from that. One, he is contrasting his own experience from Bethesda's. This is implying that Bethesda did not even use basic documentation. Having a script and another document for your sources is pretty basic. By explaining this whole process, it is implying that Bethesda doesn't even do that. Immediately after that, he says that Immel doesn't like design documents because they take too long to update. Updating them is a time-consuming task. So I want you to keep this in your mind. He has really hammered home that Bethesda does something different from the industry standard. They do not do the bare minimum of documentation, and he knows this based on what Immel said. Now, we're going to look at his sources next to see who is right here. Is it Never Knows Best or PatricianTV?
In the development of the studio, we don't have a lot of extensive design documentation. We found that probably after we hit Fallout 3, the design docs that we had became outdated very quickly because we knew we needed to get stuff in the game and play it and then change it. We needed to iterate on it. So we would have these extensive 50-page design documents that were completely outdated, and the time it took to maintain those just wasn't worth it.
All right, he did say we don't have a lot of extensive design documentation and that they found the design documents became outdated very quickly. So they no longer use these extensive 50-page design documents. Does this really sound like a designer couldn't look anything up? Do you really need a 50-page design document for every single little detail in the game to be able to look up basic facts? PatricianTV had a wild extrapolation from this line. On top of that, this isn't the only time Immel's talked about design documents.
Do you have like a design document for a game like Fallout? And everyone says, hey, this is what we're putting into production, or is it much more, much more open in terms of how the game design evolved over time?
All of our documents for Oblivion were done, paper documents in Word. We actually transitioned into wiki format for Fallout. And it was like pulling teeth to get us all to do that, because we're trying to make a game and we're trying to learn a new thing. So now all of our documents are like, are accessible through the network. But everything's documented.
So for both talks, he is talking about the same thing. Around the time of Fallout 3, they transitioned from literally a Microsoft Word document, one massive document, transitioned into wiki format. Does that sound like what PatricianTV was saying? Does that sound at all like what he was saying?
There is a middle ground of documentation between having every single minute idea or quest written down in exhaustive detail and having a couple pages of basic notes for everything. But, as is Bethesda tradition, if a good idea is broken, the best fix is removal.
Take it out.
Instead of figuring out how to better work with a design document, let's remove it.
Personally, I'm a much better reader than I am a listener. The reason I'm throwing the words on screen, in case you are, like me, you can stop, read these sentences for a moment. Really, does PatricianTV seem like he's correct in this instance? Does his quote line up with what Immel said? There's someone else, though. It actually sounds exactly like what Never Knows Best was saying. It lines up very well. If you are looking at this even somewhat objectively, it is very, very clear that PatricianTV was wrong here and Never Knows Best corrected him. There is no way around that. Just in case you are somehow still not convinced, I do have more evidence. From LinkedIn profiles of Bethesda developers, whether currently employed or recently laid off, we know that they describe one of their job's roles as maintaining detailed documentation on Confluence. Confluence is a wiki system, just like Never Knows Best and Immel were talking about. From this, we can deduce that this is the software that Bethesda uses. They use this instead of one large 50-page Microsoft Word document, like Immel said. Bethesda doesn't talk much about their design process, but we could look at Obsidian. Obsidian employs Tim Kaine and Josh Sawyer, and these guys are great public speakers. Through them, we know that Obsidian also relies on Confluence. There is no reason whatsoever to assume Bethesda uses it in any way different than Obsidian. Why would we assume that? I mean, you can assume anything you want, but there is zero evidence to support that. Let's listen to how Tim Kaine describes the way Obsidian uses Confluence, which is what Bethesda uses when documenting their design.
In the 2010s, up through now, Obsidian moved away from those big monumental GDDs and spreadsheets into Confluence. Confluence is better in every way. We still do a high-level GDD as an actual document. usually describing the setting, the tone, the art style with pictures and design pillars, again, if publishers wanted to see them. But we moved things into Confluence. Confluence just had so many advantages over a Word document. One big one was we could create all these subpages, and none of the pages were too long. They usually, if they didn't fit on a screen, it was usually 1 or 2 screen scrollfuls, because there was a lot of links to going to other things.
So Tim Kaine is talking about they used to print out a massive GDD before starting production. It was huge. And around 2010, they changed to a wiki system. And instead of having these extensive 50-page documents, they use smaller subpages that are only 1 to 2 pages long. They don't use the GDD as an extensive outline of the entire game. It's just a document with high-level ideas such as tone, art style, and core pillars. It doesn't have all the information of the game, or even close to it. Which, by the way, sounds exactly like what Emil has said. They even use the same program. So why does this matter? Does it matter that PatricianTV made a mistake, that he got something wrong? That's not the end of the world, though. The problem comes with what happens next. YouTubers need to know how to take accountability. PatricianTV does not. So how did Patrician react? Well, first he made some 20-minute video where Pat clarifies again, and by clarifies again, I mean he claims he clarified in his original video.
I said that Bethesda doesn't use a design document. I clarified in my video when I said this that they had smaller, more decentralized documentation, but that is no replacement for a centralized vision.
This is a lie. PatricianTV is trying to rewrite history and say, no, all I was saying is that Bethesda used decentralized design documentation instead of one centralized vision. But you can listen to the clips. That is not what he said. That is certainly not what he implied. When you say, imagine being a game designer who wants to look something up and you can't, that is not just saying that it's not centralized, that there isn't one design Bible. There is no reason a wiki system would prevent a designer from looking something up. When he had that clip about using exhaustive, overly documenting everything and saying there's a good middle ground, there is no reason that a wiki system could not be a good middle ground between those two things. What PatricianTV said over and over and over again does not line up with what he just clarified right here. This pattern of lying after the fact and not deleting the video, not putting a comment on the video, there's nothing in the description, nothing in the pinned comment, all of his lies are still just out there, and they're still very commonly believed. The rest of his 20-minute video did not discuss the design document thing at all. That's all he really mentioned. So then he goes on to an 11-hour podcast with EFAP. Is he going to apologize? Is he going to clarify? Is he going to take any level of accountability here? EFAP stands for every frame of pause. They're famous for playing every last thing in a video. So clearly, they're going to have to push back when PatricianTV says some of the more ridiculous things, right? Right?
The game itself is the real design document. Imagine being a designer and being told to go play the game instead of reading a few pages to answer your questions. This is woefully ineffective and can be chaotic on a development process.
Design documents are only as good as your follow through when you actually start putting stuff in game. And
then he says that it quickly became irrelevant and out of date. So I'm getting mixed signals from Emil here.
Yeah.
This doesn't seem like the way you make a video game.
Also, the statement, they're only as good as you implement them.
So they hear PatricianTV say something that is completely false, absolutely untrue, and indefensible. They completely ignore it. Reg starts saying something idiotic because that's all he can say, and Mahler starts to address what Emil said. This EFAP here, this video, is the single worst video I have ever seen on YouTube. I have never heard a YouTuber with a lower IQ than Regs. The bias here in favor of Kretosis and PatricianTV is so obnoxious that they literally refuse to hear the words being spoken. It is the most obnoxious circle jerk ever. Don't worry, we get to see some examples.
Well, really, it's a general catch-all term for any kind of document used during development.
However, kind of document?
No,
it's not any kind of document.
Well,
if I get a sticky note and give it to Bob to say, hey, can you give this to Jimmy?
Get some milk for later.
Design? Yeah, that's not a design document.
Oh, great insight. What if PatricianTV just says things without any context? Do we just take his word for it? Why not?
Josh Sawyer, in response to this, because someone asked him, said that they do documentation for their games.
Whoa.
Who's Josh Sawyer? Sorry.
Oh, so Josh Sawyer must have said something dramatically different from what Emil said, right?
Pages were not long. They were not complicated. and the navigation was as simple as it could be. The focus with our documentation was to try to keep it very brief and to focus on goals.
All right, for those of you not following along, I'm kidding. This part right here is a joke. Josh Sawyer right there is talking about Pentiment, not Fallout New Vegas. It's a much smaller team. And for a much smaller team, you want really small design documents. You don't want to over-document when you only have 5 or so people working. But this doesn't mean Josh Sawyer never talked about Fallout New Vegas. When asked about design documents for Fallout New Vegas, he said, well, there's nothing public, but we used Word documents in SharePoint. He didn't say we used one grand central design document to keep us focused. He said we used multiple Word documents in SharePoint. And said, hey, I talk a little bit about Confluence for Pentiment at this YouTube link. And that's what I just showed you. He talked about some of his design documents, and the longest one he mentioned was 33 pages for Hoover Dam. He said about half of those pages are reference images and the rest is text. These are much shorter than the 50-plus page documents that Emil was complaining about. This does not seem any different whatsoever than what Emil was describing, that they used to have one massive design document before 2008, but around that time, companies changed and they started using, well, Josh Sawyer says now they use Confluence. Back then, they started using SharePoint. They use different software other than Microsoft Word. This really does not seem any different than what Emil was saying. But of course, we're just going to take Patrician TV's word for it.
Do you have like a design document for a game like Fallout? And everyone says, hey, this is what we're putting into production, or is it much more, much more open in terms of how the game design evolved over time?
All of our documents for Oblivion were done, paper documents in Word. We actually transitioned into wiki format for Fallout.
This clip, Emil is talking about the same thing as Patrician's source that led him to say that Starfield used no design document. This is the same event that Emil is describing. In case you forgot that, I'll play it one last time in this video, and then we'll never talk about it again.
In the development of the studio, we don't have a lot of extensive design documentation. We found that probably after we hit Fallout 3, the design docs that we had became outdated very quickly because we knew we needed to get stuff in the game and play it and then change it. We needed to iterate on it. So we would have these extensive 50-page design documents that were completely outdated, and the time it took to maintain those just wasn't worth it.
In case there is any confusion left about that clip at all, let us put it to bed once and for all. What Emil is referring to here is literally their 50-plus page Word document that they would print out. That was completely outdated. They switched to a wiki system, which used much smaller, online, and easier to update documents. They are less extensive. That's why he uses the phrase, we used to use really extensive design documentation, and it was clunky to update because it was one massive document instead of using a wiki. This is obviously what he is referring to. That is why Never Knows Best pointed it out. Patrician TV somehow still seems confused about this. So does Mahler for whatever reason.
There's not one uniform way that they make video games.
I don't actually buy that it is gone from any major studio's development. It's simply changed its name or function in terms of how it's categorized.
What has largely changed is that it typically gets abandoned once they reach the alpha stage.
What I would, yeah, but like, the nature of having a core set of principles or ideas that relate to like the things that you'll be discovering in the world, or what kind of gameplay that will be interacted with, or what kind of tone you're going for, those things that aren't supposed to be evolved out of design entirely. Like, where do they belong now? It used to be a Doom Bible where everyone would actually maybe have a printed out set of pages that they all have at their desks. Like, that doesn't seem like it would be the way that they do it these days. I don't think that makes the concept like unusable. It would just be that would it not be like an accessible page on a website for everybody now?
Yes, Mahler, that is exactly correct. That is 100% the point. And the only reason Mahler is confused here is because he's operating under the assumption that Bethesda does not do that basic design principle stuff using a wiki because Patrician TV said they don't. None of his sources come even close to suggesting that. His sources are the clip I've already played about them switching to a wiki, an interview where Emil says the game is the real design document, which, by the way, is a catchphrase that you should play your game. Emil goes into such detail about this. All it means is that you should play your game and not just rely heavily on design documents. It's just a catchphrase. It doesn't mean that there are literally no documents. It's not confusing at all. Patrician TV did shoddy research. He heard that line from Emil in a 2016 talk talking about something that happened in 2008 and wildly extrapolated it. His clarification is a lie. You don't get to say, oh, I just meant that they had a smaller decentralized design documentation. They just used a wiki. When you say things like designers are unable to look up basic facts from your game. He is being a complete snake and no one ever holds him accountable. It's disgusting. I know I'm getting repetitive here, but I really want to make sure anyone who sees this video fully understands what is happening here. Patrician TV lied again and again and again and again. And then when he was caught in his lie, put on full display by a large YouTuber, instead of taking any accountability for his bad research and his shitty claims that are untrue, he moved the goalposts and then continued to lie again and again and again and insult the person who held him accountable.
I can't fucking deal with this. He's got a tweet directly from Emil saying, "Didn't know I had to mention that we write and revise smaller design documents." Like, aren't you the motherfucker that just said design docs are completely outdated and they don't use them anymore?
The only possible reason this could be confusing for Mahler is if he went into it with the assumption that Patrician TV is right and that Never Knows Best is wrong. Obviously, what Emma was referring to is that they no longer print in Microsoft Word massive design documents that the whole team has to share, which is really difficult to update. That now, after 2008, according to Emil, they switched to a wiki system, which is much easier to update and involves a lot of smaller documents rather than one massive document that everyone has to share. Mahler was so biased that he literally can't understand what is happening because he can't break from the assumption that his friend is correct.
It just wasn't worth it.
Man, I don't know.
Starfield happened.
Maybe if you had documented things properly, you wouldn't have so many issues in your games. This doesn't even have to be super professional, T's crossed and I's dotted type documentation. Just make sure you're taking notes on what you're doing so everyone else on the project knows what's being done and added to the game.
See, I said something similar.
As I said before, they are so focused on defending Patrician TV that even after they play Kritosis saying some of the dumbest possible words ever known to humanity, they completely ignore them to focus on the point that Never Knows Best made. Never Knows Best made the point that maybe Patrician TV got his idea from Kritosis for his video, that Bethesda doesn't properly document their games. A point that is really functionally irrelevant to the truth, so of course they hyper-focus on that and totally ignore what Kritosis actually said. Which, if you somehow missed it, Kritosis said that because Bethesda no longer uses Microsoft Word to make one 50-plus page central design document, and now instead they use a wiki system, that, well, basically they're not crossing their T's or dotting their I's. If they just took basic notes, then their games would be better. And Kritosis knows they don't do this because, you know, obviously he's a developer, he's worked at Bethesda. No, he just pulled it out of his ass. Because who gives a shit about reality? We just make stuff up because why not? If anybody calls us out for it, we'll just talk about them for 11 hours and use Mahler's platform to shit all over them. We'll even do one more example with Kritosis. Why not?
He concludes that right way you know simply means draw from your personal experience. This is also a point I very much disagree with. You can write good stories without direct first-hand knowledge or personal experience. You can be inspired by someone else's experience they're told to you, or that you hear of to write great things.
So, Kritosis...
Sorry, I was just going to say, I love what he says here. This is probably my favorite part of the video.
All right.
Only write about things you have first-hand experience with, and yet, in reality, all Emil said was draw from your own experiences.
This could be confusing to someone who hasn't watched the entire clips I'm talking about here. So let me give you some background. Emil Pagliarulo, in his speech, gave a few rules for writing, kind of like a 101 rules for writing class. He's talking to college kids. And he said, when you're writing, one of my rules is to draw from your personal experiences. When breaking down this speech, Kritosis said what I just played for you. This is a rule I strongly disagree with because you can write things without firsthand experience. Never Knows Best pointed all of this out and said, in reality, all Emil said is draw from your own experiences. This is not a semantic argument. It doesn't matter if you said personal or firsthand. Emil said, draw from your personal experiences. Kritosis then said, I strongly disagree with this because you can write good stories without drawing from your personal experiences. Emil never said you couldn't, and so Kritosis is lying. That's what it is. That is what is being pointed out here. I want to show you how EFAP responds to this.
That's not what he said.
So he's making a distinction between personal, first-hand experiences and
personal and first-hand.
Personal experiences?
But he doesn't say personal experience. He just says experience.
Draw from your experience. Your experience implies that it's firsthand. If you say your experience, if you say
this is just childish. Like the personal, first-hand, or general experience. You know what I mean? Like it's just like, okay, what Kretosis took from what he said was that you draw from whatever you've done in your life, when he's saying that you can draw from a hell of a lot more than that. Like,
Kretosis, did you say the words first-hand experience?
I said first-hand or personal experience.
Yeah, this is Patty.
Okay.
In case you're confused about this, if someone says something, let's say Kretosis says, I really like goats, and I reply by saying, this is a point I strongly disagree with. I don't think goats are sexy. I am lying. That is dishonest. That would be me implying that Kretosis said that goats are sexy. I'm assuming he's never said that. That is what Kretosis did to Emil. Never Knows Best was very clear about that. It's extra egregious because Emil actually gave examples in his speech of writing that he didn't have firsthand or personal experience with. So the idea that Kretosis would then watch that and say, I disagree, you can write good stories without firsthand experience is just absurd. There is no way to interpret it other than it is a lie. Instead, we get this weird semantic talk that has nothing to do with anything. The only way that you could come up with this bullshit is if you are so biased in favor of your friends, as I've said before, that you just can't even accept it is possible for one of them to be wrong and for Never Knows Best to be correct. All right, one last clip and then we'll move on from EFAP.
It is the thing that is most startlingly lacking in this entire video is talking about the actual games in question.
This is brought up a couple times in the EFAP. And Fringy, this is for you. The reason the game is not relevant is because it is not connected to the truth. It is irrelevant. What matters here is the truth. What you should be focused on is the truth. What is the reality? Did Bethesda use game design documents when making Starfield? Did they do anything different than the industry standard? What exactly happened here? Was PatricianTV telling the truth? Or was he lying? Was Never Knows Best telling the truth, or is he mistaken, or is he lying? We have people saying contradictory things. The truth matters. Someone is either lying or making a mistake. That question, what is true, is completely ignored here, which is disgusting. It's gross. The truth matters. Reality matters. If you are not grounded in reality, if you are not grounded in the truth, you are a liar, you are evil, you are disgusting, and no one should ever listen to a word you say. Come back to the truth. It's never too late. All right, up until this point, everything has been years in the past. But PatricianTV isn't done talking about Never Knows Best. What has he said about him?
Does he dislike Never Knows Best because he's a better video editor? No, I dislike Never Knows Best because he weaponizes people's dead siblings. Yeah, he could be a really personal guy. Did you know his sister died? This is really pertinent information, chat. Never Knows Best has informed us that his sister died. This makes him personable. What a piece of shit. Never Knows Best, specifically.
I first heard about this from some PatricianTV comments and tweets where he said that I endorsed weaponizing a game developer's dead sister over petty beef and that I'm giga wrong because of this. At first, I was really confused. I had no idea what this is about. After doing some research, I found that Never Knows Best mentions that Emil's sister died. Emil Pagliarulo's sister died, and Emil tweeted about it. And because of this, PatricianTV hates Never Knows Best and thinks that I'm giga wrong because I endorsed weaponizing this dead sister, which, I didn't even know about. So let's keep an open mind. What is PatricianTV talking about? Did Never Knows Best weaponize a game developer's dead sister over petty beef?
He's not always positive, though. A few weeks before he was attacked for being an entitled game developer, he tweeted about how much he's been struggling with grief after his sister unexpectedly died of cancer.
All right, well, there you have it. He did mention that Emil has a dead sister that he tweeted about in a video that it talks about PatricianTV. Okay, I guess we have to dive in, look at the deeper context now. Was this weaponized against PatricianTV? Well, no. That clip we watched is from the 2-hour and 4-minute mark. At about the 1:57-minute mark is the last time that Never Knows Best mentions PatricianTV. And he doesn't say his name, he just shows his thumbnail and says, well, here, I'll show you.
But is he wrong? Some players are disconnected from the realities of game development, and yet they do speak with complete authority, and some of them even have a massive platform. So, is Emil wrong?
In fact, about 3.5 minutes before the dead sister mark, he plays a clip from Asmongold talking about Emil, not PatricianTV.
So there is an individual that works at Bethesda. Well, what the hell do I really care? Not a lot. You think I give a fuck about your problems as a game developer? You brought out a game that didn't even have a fucking map for a city. Jesus. So pathetic. I swear to God, some game developers, there's like this fucking strain of game developers that are like in this constant battle to be like recognized for having a hard job. It's like streamers that are like fixated around people feeling sorry for them for being streamers. Shut the fuck up. If you don't like it, get another job. Nobody gives a fuck about your problems. Nobody cares about how you feel. It doesn't matter, and it never did, and it never will.
Okay, but even if this isn't about Patrician TV, why would he even mention the dead sister? What is the point of that if it's not to weaponize it to further prove his point? Well, because the entire video, the thesis of it is answering the question, does Emil deserve all the hate he gets? Is the criticism about him true, which is what the majority of the video is about? And this part is examining what he posts on social media and if that's an example of someone who is entitled and snarky and really a nasty game developer. I'm sure we've all run across them before. That is a real phenomenon.
I don't know Emil Pagliarulo, and so I can only judge him based on the things he has said and wrote online. Maybe he's not a good person. There is no way to know for sure just by looking in from the outside. We can only judge the evidence that is available. And within that evidence, there is nothing here or anywhere else I have seen to suggest that this man is in any way deserving of hate. And I have looked for evidence. When I began this video, I fully expected to see some examples of elitism or antagonism or petty arguments or things that seemed egotistical from Emil. And often, when people develop a negative reputation online, they do play at least some part in creating it. I also believe that there are two sides to every story, so I wanted to find the other side of this one. But it doesn't seem to be there.
I really resonate with this exact point by Never Knows Best. It is exactly how I see the situation. You can contrast Emil Pagliarulo with Jay Wilson, the lead designer and game director for Diablo 3, and analyze his social media posts. Well, he said, fuck that guy, when referring to David Brevik, the guy who created Diablo in the first place. This would be the same as Emil saying, fuck Tim Kaine, he's a loser, or fuck Josh Sawyer, I hate him. Never Knows Best is going through his social media and claiming that there is nothing like this at all. I really don't see it as a big deal that he mentioned the post about his sister, especially because it's such a small part of his total argument and has nothing to do with Patrician TV or Asmongold or anybody else. It's just about Emil. So the weaponizing of the dead person is a 12-second clip from a much larger section of a much larger video that has the express purpose of going over Emil's X posts, his Twitter posts, whatever you call them. Frankly, I don't see it. It makes sense to me why he would talk about the things that Emil said. You could take it out and the video wouldn't be worse. Sure, that's a valid criticism, that he didn't need to add it into his video. But to act like it was used as a weapon against Asmongold or Patrician TV is just another lie. Add it to the pile. You have to assume that Never Knows Best is completely lying here. He is 100% dishonest about this entire thing. The idea that he would make this video just for the express purpose of attacking Patrician TV and not for defending Emil, I absolutely believe he would not have done this much research into Emil if he did not genuinely want to defend him. And so yeah, he brought up his dead sister in defense of Emil. I'm not really going to judge him for that. I don't care. It doesn't bother me. If I died and somebody was lying and shitting all over my brother and someone said, you know what, his brother just died, I'd be okay with that. I don't really care where people fall on either side of this. I just wanted to show that it's not as simple as Never Knows Best said, how dare you criticize him, his sister just died. It's a very tiny clip and there's a lot of context around it within this over 2-hour-long video. Frankly, I agree with Never Knows Best 100%. Emil does not deserve any of the hate he gets. The only thing he did that is actually valid that people complain about is Nate the Rake. And that hadn't even happened at this time, you know, and Nate the Rake's funny. So, all right, time to move on to me.
I mean, it was validation because, like, so you have like the old knight who like tries to gaslight people into thinking, no, the Oblivion level scaling is not a problem, and then like immediately when the remake came out, there were like forum posts again about like, man, the level scaling's not like really causing me issues, and it's like, yeah the average person who interacts with that level scaling system has a bad time because it sets you up for failure.
Before I respond to this, I understand that most of you watching this will be outsiders. You don't really have any clue what is being talked about here. The reason this is important to me is because I created my channel around the idea of defending the Oblivion attribute leveling system. Not the level scaling system, but the specific attribute leveling system that was removed with the remaster. This is a controversial position, and it is very reasonable to assume that I am the strongest defender of this system, as in I have defended it more than any other person on Earth, and I am probably the largest influencer, if you want to call me that, who has defended this system. Even back when I only had 2,000 subscribers, I was still the largest YouTuber who defended the Oblivion leveling system. This is not mainstream thought. This is the old Knight's opinion, and really, it's just mine. The vast majority of people who agree with me didn't come out and voice that opinion until I created my channel and started pushing it. I am the progenitor of the defense of this opinion. Okay, maybe that's a little cocky, but it's mine. I have done it way more and way more thoroughly than anyone else ever. And it's not even close. So then to hear PatricianTV come out, and this guy gets 30,000 views on his stream and says that I was defending the Oblivion scaling system. Like, just don't talk about me at all if you don't know anything about my channel. That's fine. You don't need to know anything about my channel, but don't lie about me. That is wrong. Before I continue, I want to explain to people who feel totally lost at this section. In Morrowind and Oblivion, two very old games now, how powerful your level ups were, as in how much you could increase your attributes by upon level up, was based on what skills you used during that level up. This was unpopular, and people often, to try and deal with it, would play backwards and play in really bad and weird ways. PatricianTV is among these people. If you're curious about that, I go over that in great detail in this video here. Here's a quick sample from PatricianTV describing the way he played Oblivion.
This is why my Morrowind follow-up video there was footage of me naked running around Oblivion punching clan fears. I have to leave Oblivion to level, and since I can't risk underleveling, well, the armor has to go. Now, does that sound extremely tedious and stupid? That's because it's extremely tedious and stupid. That's a pretty terrible class. The first rule of min-maxing in Oblivion is to throw away the notion that the abilities you plan to use are in your class. I have an audio interface with a volume knob on it that quickly lets me change the volume of the audio on my computer without having to play with the settings or the built-in software volume mixer. I kinda wanted one of those, but just tied to the difficulty in Oblivion. I spent the first hour of the game running around Lake Rumari, picking Nernrit and punching mud crabs to train my hand-to-hand at high difficulty, because in order to train effectively I need the crabs to survive several hits.
I strongly disagree with his point about the first rule of min-maxing in Oblivion, and everything he described himself doing was unnecessary and stupid, and he just did it for bad reasons. That's why I made videos about him. There are other dumb things he said or incorrect things he said that I corrected him on, and that is again why I made videos about him. I never once clipped him talking about level scaling, ever. We have never had a disagreement about that. I'm going to show you a quick montage of clips from my videos that I have made over the past year and a half, the duration of this channel, where I am defending the attribute leveling system and not defending the scaling system. In fact, I even complain about the level scaling system from time to time. As you watch the montage I'm about to show you, keep in your mind the Oblivion remaster removed the attribute leveling system. It did not change the way level scaling works. Also, keep in your mind that PatricianTV said that he is vindicated specifically against my criticisms because people are unhappy with the remaster, and then I am the one gaslighting people. Here we go.
I think when you look at the design philosophy of Oblivion's leveling system, it lines up so well with the skill progression system. When I swing my sword, not only do I get better at swinging my sword, but my character also gets physically stronger. They gain the strength attribute. In this video, I'm going to be arguing that the leveling system in Classic Oblivion is better than the remaster, and this is not a popular opinion. So in summary, I think they should have tried to keep the old system. It was a lot better. I'm sad that they got rid of it. It wasn't perfect, but I think that these cons, these downsides of it they could have addressed those cons instead, rather than just completely scrapping the system and having this new, very boring system that I would argue has a lot more flaws. They didn't just slightly tweak the classic version to make it less punishing, they completely scrapped it. It does not matter how you play at all, where in Classic Oblivion, that is a big part of the experience. A massive part of the experience is it does matter how you play. If you don't make potions, summon things, or use mysticism, then you don't get to increase your intelligence.
Every action, no matter how big or small, improves your ability to perform that action. And to a lesser degree, it improves your ability to perform similar actions. The system is not perfect. I mean, I think it's perfect, but it is convoluted and confusing.
Here are the top 10 things that I hate about the Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion. Number 1 is infinite scaling for enemies. Hopefully you enjoy my sped up voice. Look, this has been pretty self-indulgent for me, but Patrician TV does know what this disagreement is about. I have been incredibly consistent on this topic for 18 straight months. It's a core part of what my channel is. His words from his stream, here, I'll play him again.
I mean, it was validation, because, like, so you have, like, the old knight who, like, tries to gaslight people into thinking, no, the Oblivion level scaling's not a problem, and then, like...
It's just a flat-out lie. None of his wacky playstyle, like intentionally taking off armor, punching mud crabs for an hour, none of that makes sense. He doesn't need to ignore his major skills and make sure he never uses them. And overall, his criticism of the Oblivion leveling system is garbage. If anyone is vindicated by a poor reception of the Oblivion remaster, I'm the one who's vindicated because removing the attribute leveling system did not improve anyone's perception of the game. Alright, and now we get to the last topic. The cherry on top of his pile of lies. I've mentioned this once already in my influencers are brainwashing you video, so it's sort of a rehash. You already saw, I like repeating myself. This last section really parallels what happened with Never Knows Best. Patrician TV did shoddy research, made false claims, and then when someone called him out, he lied in an attempt to change history and make himself look better. This example's about Oblivion, so it's much easier. I don't need to look up any sources. It's just a game. I can just show Patrician TV lying to us. Here we go.
I made a mistake in my Morrowind video. I accidentally portrayed Oblivion's melee combat as being less spongy than it actually is. I never corrected the mistake publicly because honestly, I think most people aren't gonna find it scandalous if I made an error that benefited a game I was critiquing.
Oh, he's saying he made a mistake in his Morrowind video talking about Oblivion and it made Oblivion look better than it actually is. Let's examine this mistake.
Let's contrast this now with Oblivion's allegedly revolutionary and entertaining combat system. Clip 1. Alright, and clip 2. Now, tell me, which one was the master clip and which one was the apprentice clip? This is not a trick where I switch the clips or they're both the same skill level. I've kept all the conditions the same. Same enemy, same difficulty. The first clip is skill level 5, the second clip is skill level 100, and yet they are practically identical.
His mistake is that in both clips he has 100 skill. Do you think that truly makes Oblivion combat look better than it actually is?
The error is in benefit of Oblivion and Bethesda, so I kind of just forgot about it.
Before I keep going, I want to take an aside. That comment really highlights a massive difference between Patrician TV and I. I am always very interested in the truth and analysis in reality. I don't care if it makes Bethesda or whatever look good or bad. I don't have a dog in this fight. I don't own stocks for Bethesda. I'm not a big fan of any Fallout game I've ever played. Does that make me a huge Bethesda fanboy? With that aside out of the way though, I'll quickly show you a combat analysis for Oblivion that is fair, that makes the combat look better without making any mistakes. Oh yeah, clip 1. Time for clip 2. Can you tell the difference? Hopefully you can see doing tests like this is really stupid. The first one I had 5 blade skill, the second one I had 100. Wow. It's idiotic. There are so many variables. You can just look at the formula. That's kind of my thing. When you have 100 blade skill, you deal about 6 times more damage with your weapon. That absolutely looks different than 5 blade skill, and it feels different from 5 blade skill. If it didn't, that would make Oblivion look a lot worse. It would be much worse of a game if you did the exact same damage with 5 blade skill and 100 blade skill. Patrician TV is just totally lying. Again, of course, because why not? In this response video that he is making where he's saying, oops, I made a mistake, he also continues to lie about me.
Some people lately were taking issue with it. Ironically though, not for the actual mistake. No, their issue is that they think the blade level 100 example shouldn't take 24 swings.
I promise you, he is talking about me. He never mentions my name, but no one else ever made a video calling out Patrician TV for this blade test. It's just me. I'll play you a clip from the video that this is a response to. You tell me, is my complaint that I think the 100 blade skill shouldn't take 24 swings? Is that what I said? I can guarantee you he won't find a clip where I say that. That is not my problem with this test. But you can find me saying this.
For some context, he is demonstrating why gaining more blade skill has no effect on gameplay in Oblivion.
Clip 1. The second problem is that combat at level 1 is the same as combat at level 20. This is not the case in Morrowind because, hit chance, and that was the point of my combat comparison.
Because going from 5 blade to 100, it is more than a 6 times damage increase.
All 3 of those clips are from various points of the video he is responding to. Obviously, I am correcting him and demonstrating that no, having 100 blade makes you deal 6 times more damage. I never once said, oh no, with 100 blade it should take less than 24 swings. That is another flat out lie. Don't worry, he keeps lying. Here's another one.
I was going to address it in my Oblivion video and didn't because it gets too much into methodology and interpretation. Despite being a 12-hour video, I was actually concerned about brevity.
I like to take people at their word. I like to believe people when they say something. If I didn't have evidence that he is lying here, I would take his word for it. I want to give him room to grow and to do better and to hold himself accountable. That needs to be there. However, in the video he is responding to, I've already played the clip where he references this test within his Oblivion video.
The second problem is that combat at level 1 is the same as combat at level 20. This is not the case in Morrowind because, hit chance, and that was the point of my combat comparison.
For context, this test happened in one of his first videos. It's very old. It's about Morrowind. He made a mistake. He claims to have noticed it, and the reason he did not address it in his Oblivion video was for brevity, but he did reference it anyway. I think if you knew that you had made a mistake and you intended to fix it, but cut that due to time, you would at bare minimum at least not reference your bad, incorrect test. Okay, and the very last lie we're going to talk about in this video, I'm getting tired. This one is more of a misdirection. This is just another way that he's kind of slimy and snaky. It's about what difficulty did I do my test on.
Point stands. It takes 24 swings in the 2019 test, and it takes 24 swings in 2025. So I guess these people are self-reporting that they play below the middle difficulty, which is why it seems like it should take fewer swings than it actually does.
The reason this is such a bullshit claim is he watched my video. He had to have watched this video that I'm showing right now where I deal 21 damage. You see it right there. And you also see I show that I have 100 strength. In his test, he only had 40 strength. So that's just a difference between our tests. And he's probably lying. He could just be stupid and not have paid attention. Maybe he didn't actually watch the video and he's just responding to it anyway. And I think that's going to lead me to the summary. PatricianTV. If you do not watch my content, fine. So be it. You do not have to watch my content. I'm not that big of a YouTuber. My popular videos don't even get that many views. I've never come close to 1 million, even 500,000 views on a single video. And my typical videos get between 5,000 and 10,000 views. I'm a little thorn in your side. Just ignore me. Stop lying about me. If you actually want to give me a real response, you need to watch my videos. Don't do this bullshit like you did on stream right here.
Recently Old Knight's been taking like pro Starfield stances. You see, Never Knows Best was smart enough to defend Pagliarulo without defending Starfield. Like that shit was so smooth that he just skated by like, oh no, trust me, this is not a defense of Starfield. This is just we're just focusing on the critique here of what was said. That was almost like a procedural complaint. Whereas Old Knight isn't that slick.
I rated Starfield as a B tier game. I thought it was okay. There's some parts I liked about it. If you watch my videos, you would know that. And if you don't watch my videos, then stop fucking pretending you do. 30,000 people hear you lie about me. That is way too many people. It is time to stop lying. It's wrong. It's evil. For our conclusion, I want to do a little quick comparison. I recently made a video about Drawn Out. I was pretty harsh on Drawn Out. He's a different YouTuber. He's an anti-Bethesda YouTuber. He's gotten pretty popular recently talking shit about Bethesda. He's kind of funny, but he's sort of repetitive. He doesn't really go against the grain. and he said a couple really stupid things. I really hammered him for those stupid things he said. Instead of lying about me, pretending he never said those things, or ignoring any of my valid criticisms, he said, "Hey, I messed up. Thanks for helping me grow." Honestly, I would never expect that much from a normal YouTuber. You don't have to be as awesome as Drawn Out, who's willing to just take full accountability for his mistakes, but at least take one tiny step toward it. Even in your I made a mistake video, you lied about 4 times. It's a short video. You only talk for a few minutes. You're lying once per minute while talking. It's time to figure it out. That's all I got. Thanks for watching.
We cut a bunch of stuff and ended up with 270 pages of documentation, which nobody read, and we entered production.
Obsidian moved away from those big monumental GDDs and spreadsheets into Confluence. And none of the pages were too long. They usually, if they didn't fit on a screen, it was usually 1 or 2 screen scrollfuls, because there was a lot of links to going to other things.
I wanted to start out talking about design Bibles, and who's ever read a design Bible cover to cover? Okay, so, and most of you have probably been in the industry for a while, because those are kind of the dinosaurs now. Teams were much smaller. As teams get bigger and bigger and projects get bigger, you just can't do this anymore. If you had to update the document, let's say I want to change one sentence. How am I going to do that? I've already printed 20 copies. I've handed it out. I'm going to go through and unbind them all and change this paper and just put in this one sentence, and how is everybody going to know I did that? So of course, we've moved on from those, and now we're in the era of the design wiki. As a designer, you hear this all the time. Well, I write all this documentation, but nobody ever reads it. And it's true, no one ever really reads much of anything anymore. So, of course, the solution and what this talk is about is only use one page.
As a company, all of our documents for Oblivion were done, paper documents in Word. We actually transitioned into wiki format for Fallout.
I could give a whole talk just on my opinions on documentation, but generally speaking, don't over-document. If you develop documents, keep them short, focus on goals. You want to do things that are helping the team, not wasting your time and wasting their time. I'm sure everyone in this room has written a document that almost no one on the team, if anyone on the team, has ever read.
Be honest with yourself as a developer, because no matter how awesome you think your design document is, there comes a point where the design document becomes gameplay. And then you play it, and then you have to have this brutal honesty with yourself and say, wow, you know what? This really sucks. And I just spent a week doing it. And there's a part of you that wants to go, nah, it's fine. Just leave it in. Fuck it, it's great. And that's the part of you that you have to subdue. And you have to be honest with yourself and know when something's bad and suck it up and go back in and change it.